Welcome, everyone. We are so glad you could join us today for this custom-tailored deep dive.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
We know you're constantly looking to, cut through the noise, to get straight to the heart of how things actually work.
And today, we're tackling an absolute behemoth.
We really are. We're diving into this massive, incredibly detailed Wikipedia dossier all about the United States Congress.
Which is a huge topic.
Right. And look, if your eyes just glazed over at the word Congress, stick with me. We are not going to subject you to, a dry high school civics textbook lecture.
No, definitely not.
You already know the basics. You know there's a House. You know there's a Senate. Our mission today is to strip away the marble columns and the polite committee jargon. We want to uncover the surprisingly dramatic, intensely human engine of the U.S. government.
Because that's where the real story is.
Exactly. We're talking about the raw mechanics of power, how it's hoarded, how it's wielded, the massive influx of money, and the structural loopholes that impact your life every single day. Okay, let's unpack this.
It really is a staggering document to synthesize. When you step back and look at the sheer scale of the legislative branch, you realize the neat little diagrams we all learned from, they completely fail to capture the friction.
Oh, completely.
The chaos is actually the point. And to really understand why Congress operates the way it does today, you got to go back to the original blueprint.
Right, the Constitution.
Exactly. The founders essentially built a permanent tug-of-war right into the foundation.
That friction jumps off the page immediately. When you look at the Constitution, Congress is established right up front. It's Article 1.
Not the presidency.
Right, not the presidency and not the Supreme Court, Article 1. The founders actually expected the legislative branch to be the absolute powerhouse of the federal government.
They gave it prime real estate.
They really did. Why was that?
Well, that placement is deeply intentional. And it stems directly from a profound sense of panic.
Panic.
Yeah, panic. Before the Constitution was drafted in 1787, the nation was operating under the Articles of Confederation.
Right, the original system.
And that system featured a Congress, but it was practically powerless. It couldn't collect taxes. It couldn't regulate commerce.
It was basically just a suggestion box.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It was essentially a governing body that had to politely ask the states for permission to do anything. You had a fledgling nation that couldn't even collect membership dues to keep the lights on.
Wow.
It was a completely toothless system, and it was rapidly leading to economic collapse.
So the founders convene in 1787. They're terrified of a weak government, but they're equally terrified of a tyrannical king.
Exactly. They need a strong legislature.
But the convention almost implodes over how to build it. You have the large states demanding representation based on population.
They essentially wanted to run the show.
Right. And then you have the small states digging their heels in, demanding equal representation so they don't get entirely steamrolled. It's a massive standoff.
Which forces the Connecticut Compromise.
The Great Compromise.
Yeah. And rather than simply finding a middle ground, they bolted two entirely different philosophies together. They split Congress in two.
Creating the bicameral system.
Right. So you have the Senate giving a state like Wyoming the exact same voting power as a behemoth like California.
2 senators each.
2 each. And then you have the House of Representatives, which is entirely at the mercy of population shifts.
They purposefully designed a machine that constantly fights with itself.
That's the brilliance and the frustration of it. The two chambers have to agree to get anything done, which virtually guarantees that sweeping radical change is agonizingly difficult.
I was actually looking at the numbers that make up that machine today. We all know there are 100 senators. Over in the House, you have 435 representatives. But I found it fascinating that the number 435 isn't actually in the Constitution.
No, it's not.
The research points out that Congress essentially just stopped adding seats. The Reapportionment Act of 1929 permanently capped the House at 435.
They just lock it in?
Locked it in.
Yeah.
You also have 6 non-voting members representing U.S. territories in Washington, D.C. sitting in on the action. But having that structure is one thing. The real question is how they wield the muscle.
And the most formidable weapon they have is the power of the purse.
The money.
Always the money. The Constitution authorizes Congress to lay and collect taxes, pay debts, and borrow money on the credit of the United States.
Right.
But in practice, this isn't just administrative bookkeeping. It's the ultimate leverage.
And this is the part that touches your daily life, the listener's daily life. Every dollar the federal government spends, whether it's building the highway you commute on, funding the military, or backing your student loans has to be appropriated by Congress.
They hold the checkbook.
And they weaponize this constantly. If a president wants to enact a massive new policy initiative, Congress can just refuse to write the check.
Just starve it of funding.
Exactly. They can attach policy writers to must-pass budget bills, literally starving an opposing agenda of oxygen. The House even holds the exclusive right to originate revenue-raising bills.
The tax bills start in the House.
Right. But here's where it gets really interesting. Congress also holds the exclusive constitutional power to declare war.
On paper, absolutely.
On paper.
But the reality of how that military authority has been wielded is a completely different story.
Yeah.
The dossier highlights a truly mind-blowing historical reality.
Yeah, this blew my mind.
Yes, Congress has formally declared war in major conflicts. The War of 1812, the Spanish-American War, both world wars.
The big one.
The big ones. But modern presidents have repeatedly found workarounds. A 1970 Time magazine report cited in the research noted that U.S. presidents had ordered troops into position or action without a formal congressional declaration a staggering 149 times.
149 times. That is just incredible.
It really is.
The document specifically calls out President Harry Truman sending troops into Korea in 1950. He bypassed a formal declaration of war and described it to the press as a police action.
A police action.
Yeah. It's a massive flex of executive power pushing right up against the boundaries of legislative authority. It shows you that these constitutional rules aren't always hard walls.
They're more like fences.
Fences that presidents constantly try to jump over.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you start to see the ecosystem of checks and balances functioning in the wild.
How so?
The branches are in a constant state of overlap and competition. Congress can write all the laws it wants, but the judicial branch can step in and completely nullify a congressional act if they deem it unconstitutional.
Striking it down.
Right. And that precedent was established way back in 1803 with the Marbury v. Madison Supreme Court case.
But Congress isn't defenseless against the courts or the president. They hold the ultimate trump card, which is impeachment.
The nuclear option.
A nuclear option. The power to remove a president, a federal judge, or another federal officer.
But it's designed to be almost impossible to actually detonate.
Right.
The House acts almost like a grand jury. They hold the sole power to initiate the impeachment with a simple majority.
Just 50% plus one.
Exactly. But then it moves to the Senate for a trial. And that requires a steep two-thirds vote to actually convict and remove the official.
Looking at the historical applications of this tool really puts that difficulty into perspective.
It really does.
In the entire history of the United States, the House has only pulled this trigger on 3 presidents. Andrew Johnson in 1868, Bill Clinton in 1999, and Donald Trump in 2019 and 2021.
And in every single one of those instances, the Senate trial ended in acquittal.
Every single one. Even with Richard Nixon in 1974, he resigned before the full House could formally vote to impeach.
So nobody has actually been removed by the Senate.
No president. Right. It's a staggering power to wield. But the built-in friction of that two-thirds Senate requirement makes actual removal extraordinarily rare.
Which goes back to the design.
Yeah.
The threshold is astronomically high so that impeachment cannot easily be used as just a routine partisan weapon.
Right. It's meant for extreme cases.
Exactly. Now, while those massive constitutional standoffs get all the primetime news coverage, the actual day-to-day legislating is happening far away from the cameras.
It's an absolute labyrinth.
It really is.
The classic how a bill becomes a law narrative makes it sound like a straight line.
I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill.
Exactly. But it isn't. An idea gets introduced, and it immediately gets swallowed by what the dossier accurately calls the hidden factory of Congress.
And we're talking about the sprawling committee system. There's a phrase in the source that perfectly captures this. They call them independent fiefdoms.
Fiefdoms! I love that.
You have roughly 200 committees and subcommittees across both chambers. This is where the actual life or death of a piece of legislation is decided.
When a bill goes into a committee markup session, that's the room where the specific tax loopholes for your 401k are quietly written into existence. Or erased, right? It's the room where the funding for your local infrastructure project is debated and potentially killed before it ever sees the House floor.
Because no single lawmaker can be an expert on agriculture, aerospace, healthcare, and foreign policy simultaneously.
It's just too much.
So they join these committees to carve out highly specialized niches of power. and they have an army of bureaucrats helping them do it.
The sheer scale of the invisible support network behind these lawmakers is staggering.
Unbelievable.
Take the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO.
Right.
They are the ultimate nonpartisan budget crunchers. If the CBO scores a popular piece of legislation and determines it's going to add billions to the deficit, that math alone can completely derail the bill.
It's a massive hurdle.
Then you have the Government Accountability Office, the GAO. They act as the congressional watchdog to audit how taxpayer money is actually being deployed.
Watching the purse strings.
Exactly. And you also have the Congressional Research Service, the CRS.
The brain trust.
Basically the private think tank for the legislative branch. They employ around 900 people whose sole focus is providing lawmakers with deep nonpartisan research to help them understand these incredibly dense issues.
And supporting all of this is the Library of Congress.
Yes, and I have to share this wild historical anecdote from the dossier.
Oh, this is a great one.
During the War of 1812, British forces actually burned down the Library of Congress in 1814.
Right to the ground.
To the ground. So to rebuild that intellectual foundation, Congress authorized the purchase of Thomas Jefferson's personal library.
His entire collection.
Fast forward to today, and it's the largest library in the world, holding nearly 150 million items.
It's an unparalleled repository of human knowledge just sitting right at the fingertips of these committees.
So you have this massive, complex institution. It's packed with specialized fiefdoms, backed by nonpartisan think tanks, and armed with historic constitutional powers.
Right.
Which brings us to a massive contradiction. And I want to pose this directly to you, the listener. Why is Congress historically deeply unpopular, yet we consistently re-elect the exact same people to run it?
It is arguably the greatest paradox in American politics.
It makes no sense on the surface.
None. If you look at the public polling data provided in the source, approval of Congress typically hovers around a dismal 25%.
Which is terrible.
And during a particularly bitter government shutdown in October 2013, that approval rating collapsed to an abysmal 5%.
5%. It's a staggering disconnect. In the corporate world, if a CEO had a 5% approval rating from their shareholders, the board would fire them by lunchtime.
Oh, they'd be gone immediately.
But in Congress, the historical re-election rate for incumbents, the people who already hold the office, routinely exceeds 90%.
Over 90%.
We collectively despise the job the institution is doing, but we overwhelmingly re-elect our own specific representatives. How does that math work?
What's fascinating here is the sheer structural weight of the incumbency advantage.
The home field advantage.
Exactly. Once a lawmaker's inside the building, the entire system is fundamentally tilted to keep them there.
The research outlines several massive hurdles for any challenger trying to break in. First, you have gerrymandering.
Drawing the lines.
Every 10 years, state officials redraw congressional district lines. And by surgically drawing these boundaries, they often create safe seats, heavily weighted toward one party, virtually guaranteeing the incumbent's survival.
And then you have the franking privilege.
Which is what, exactly?
Members of Congress are allowed to send official mail to their constituents for free.
Just free postage.
Free postage.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, the rules prohibit using franked mail for blatant electioneering. But as the dossier points out, that line is incredibly blurry.
I can imagine.
Incumbents can flood their districts with taxpayer-funded mail, detailing all the great work they're doing. It's an insurmountable free advertising advantage that a challenger simply cannot match.
And we haven't even talked about the biggest hurdle, which is the sheer volume of cash required to play the game.
The money is wild.
The cost of running for federal office has skyrocketed into the stratosphere. Modern races frequently cost more than $1 million just to secure a House seat.
$1 million.
And upward of $6 million or more to fight for a Senate seat.
That's a huge barrier to entry.
Massive. Political action committees, PACs, and major donors are looking for a return on their investment. Because incumbents win over 90% of the time, the fundraising money naturally funnels directly to them.
It's a safe bet.
Right. It starves grassroots challengers of the capital they need to even get their message out.
It creates a perpetual cycle. Lawmakers are forced to spend an exorbitant amount of their time just dialing for dollars just to maintain their war chests.
Instead of legislating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it begs the question, what actually drives someone to fight that hard and spend millions of dollars to keep a job where the vast majority of the country might be furious with you?
It's a great question.
The dossier cites political scientist Richard Fenno, who categorized lawmakers by their primary driving motivations.
He broke it down into 3 distinct types of survival and ambition. First, you have lawmakers completely focused on re-election.
The constituent servers.
Right. They dedicate their energy to providing ruthless constituent services,
Yeah.
helping the people back home cut through federal red tape to secure their Social Security checks or veterans benefits. If they keep the people at home happy, they stay in power.
Makes sense.
Second, you have lawmakers driven by good public policy. These are the policy wonks who genuinely want to build a legacy of crafting legislation that alters the fabric of the country.
And the third category is entirely focused on power in the chamber.
The inside game.
Yes. These lawmakers are playing the internal political game. They focus on climbing the committee ladders, managing the competing needs of their colleagues, and wielding influence within the institution itself.
It's a complex ecosystem of ambition, but it's vital to point out that for a very long time, the demographics of who even had the opportunity to wield that ambition were incredibly restricted.
Highly restricted.
Let's look at the VIP club itself. Historically, Congress was almost exclusively the domain of wealthy white men. I was totally floored by this historical quirk in the research. For a white woman to gain a seat in the early 20th century, the most viable path was something known as the widow's succession.
Yeah. The widow's mandate.
They were literally appointed or elected to take over a congressional seat only after their husband died in office.
That was the workaround. And for women of color, the structural barriers were exponentially higher.
Oh, absolutely.
Systemic racism, voter suppression, and Jim Crow laws effectively blocked access to federal representation entirely. It wasn't until the landmark passage of the Voting Rights Act in 1965, coupled with the elimination of race-based immigration quotas, that the institutional doors actually began to force open.
You start to see watershed shifts, like the 1992 Year of the Woman. That election brought a significant influx of female lawmakers, heavily driven by political action committees that were specifically designed to fund and elevate female candidates. So what does this all mean?
It means that Congress, despite its rigid rules, is not a static monolith.
It changes.
The source emphasizes that the institution is in a constant, albeit painfully slow, state of flux. It's continuously morphing to closer reflect the actual demographic makeup of the nation it governs.
But even as the demographics diversify, the sheer concentration of wealth within that building remains staggering.
Staggering is the right word.
A 2014 report cited in the dossier revealed that for the first time in American history, over half of the members of Congress were verifiable millionaires.
More than half.
That accumulation of personal wealth leads directly into how insulated these members can be, and it has sparked some heavy, ongoing controversies.
Absolutely. The research notes persistent accusations of insider trading.
This is a huge one.
You have lawmakers or their immediate families actively trading stocks in the very same industries that their specific committees are tasked with regulating.
It's a massive conflict of interest.
There's a notable study from 2011 that concluded the investment portfolios of members of Congress actually outperformed both the general stock market and professional hedge funds.
Outperformed hedge funds.
Yeah, it's a data point that has driven intense public demands for reform, like forcing lawmakers to place their assets into blind trusts.
You also have outside advocacy groups and lobbyists paying for lavish fact-finding trips abroad. Lawmakers defend these excursions as vital for staying informed on international relations, but critics look at the luxury hotels and spa treatments and see a massive ethical gray area.
It's definitely a bad look.
But speaking of being insulated from normal consequences, there's a constitutional perk detailed in the dossier that acts as a literal get-out-of-jail-free card. It's called parliamentary privilege.
It's a fascinating clause. The Constitution grants members of Congress immunity from arrest while they're traveling to and from a congressional session.
Wait, literally?
Literally. Unless they commit treason, a felony, or a breach of the peace, they cannot be detained, delayed, or pulled over by law enforcement.
That is wild.
They're also entirely immune from being sued for slander for anything they say during a speech or debate on the floor of either chamber.
They are quite literally legally shielded so that the machinery of the government cannot be interrupted by local disputes or petty lawsuits. It's wild to think about, but it goes right back to the founders' intent in Article 1. They wanted a fiercely independent legislative branch.
They engineered an incredibly complex machine. It's designed to be loud, it's designed to be difficult, and it's designed to endure.
And as we wrap up today's deep dive, that is the overarching takeaway we want to leave you with. When you absorb the totality of this Wikipedia dossier, You are looking at an institution of overwhelming scale.
Massive.
It is undeniably messy. It is astronomically expensive to participate in. It's heavily influenced by high-powered lobbyists, past money, and deep, bitter partisanship.
Okay.
Yet, despite the incredibly low public approval ratings, the scholars cited in the source material describe Congress as a remarkably resilient institution. It's the only room big enough to force the diverse, intensely conflicting views of a massive nation into one place and demand they figure it out.
This raises an important question, one for you to chew on after you finish listening today. We spend an enormous amount of time complaining about the gridlock in Washington.
All the time.
We hate how agonizingly slow the process is, how nothing seems to get resolved efficiently, and how opposing factions are locked in constant warfare.
Right.
But if the Founding Fathers purposefully designed this legislative branch to be heavily layered, filled with opposing factions, split into two chambers that must compromise, and bound by overlapping checks and balances, is the slow, frustrating gridlock we constantly complain about today actually a sign that the system is broken? Or is it a sign that this system is working exactly the way it was designed to?
That is a thought to keep you up at night. Thank you so much for joining us on this custom deep dive into the United States Congress. We hope we helped strip away the textbook dust and give you a real look at the machinery, the money, and the human friction underneath it all. Keep asking questions, keep reading, and keep exploring. We will catch you on the next one.